Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday and welcome to another LFG Live. Today we will be continuing on with our hiring and team structure series. Today we're going to talk about onboarding as a growth strategy. But first, two things before we get started. One, apologies on being 2 minutes late. When I logged on, my camera wasn't working. It was funny. One of my first things to do today was going to be a shout out to some of my folks up in Boston that are watching today who happen to be in the field of audio, visual, and all those fun things. And right when I know I was going to give a shout out to them, my audio visual stuff is not working today. So maybe I'll give you guys a call after this and get my stuff fixed. Shout out to Chris up there. But two, of course, team, before we even jump into onboarding as a growth strategy, what are we drinking today? I am drinking another tea. I'm going to have to switch it up one of these days. I'm just drinking a raspberry hibiscus tea with some honey in it because I don't know if you guys can hear, a little under the weather today. So definitely putting some honey in my tea. And even more gross, I recently made a honey jalapeno infused, a garlic jalapeno infused honey. So when I'm not feeling well, I can take a little bit of that. I did just take that. Not the best tasting, but hopefully it's going to help me feel a little bit better as we jump into this so I can get through it without stopping for a tissue break too often. Again, my apologies on that. So let's jump in. Again, today for March, we've already gone over when is the right time to hire, the true cost of a bad hire, and hiring for skill versus values. Today, we're going to talk about onboarding. Hiring's the hard part. And I'm not going to lie, it's not easy. Making sure you have the job posting out, going through all the interviews to find that right individual, right? Making sure that you're looking through all the parameters of what a real great hire looks like. And again, you can go back on some of the episodes previous to this to talk a little bit more about that. But making sure you have that right person in the job offers, sometimes a little back and forth, maybe a background check depending on the role in your organization. And they think a lot of owners, CEOs, managers think that's the hardest part. It's hard, but in my opinion, not the hardest. It's the next part, onboarding. Onboarding is a growth strategy. Making sure you're bringing people on the right way, in an educated way. They understand the values, the culture of your company, how things work, and are excelling at what you need them to do. That's captured in that beginning, in that onboarding piece. So I've seen in a lot of people that I've spoken to in the past think onboarding just means paperwork. It means the tax paperwork we're filling out, the I-9 paperwork that we're filling out. That's not it. It's part of it. Of course, we need to get all that legal stuff behind us, but it's not really everything. It really is how we're building that culture, how we're speeding up the time to our productivity for that individual, protecting our customer experience, making sure that we have people out of this onboarding. They are locked, loaded, ready to go, ready to represent your brand, ready to get the job done. And what it makes sure that we're avoiding is confusion, the duplication of work. We talked about that a few weeks ago, where if we have that bad hire coming on board, it's not only what their bad productivity is, it's the fact that the coworkers, everybody around them has to clean up that mess. You as a supervisor have to monitor more. You have to do the rework more. You have to do a lot more apologies and a lot more damage control because that onboarding was not done right. And they are out of the gate doing things incorrectly. Even if they don't want to, even if they're a great human being, you didn't set the right expectations or give them the right training, they're not going to come out doing an amazing job. So making sure that we're building that culture. And with that too is that turnover. Think about going through this amazing hiring process. You hire somebody, and on day one, they're ready to go. They've told their friends and family, they're excited. They have their new career journey, and they get there, and crickets. Everything just kind of falls flat. I've seen that happen, and that is painful to watch, especially when you know you have a great organization. So for me, making sure that we get somebody into that onboarding, that it is exciting, as fun as it could possibly be, and I know it's not the most fun in the world, right? Get your onboarding at work and your training, but get out of that mindset a little bit. We can make it a lot of fun and very, very engaging. And of course, just like I say every week, every organization, every industry that we work with is going to have a different onboarding, and I get it. So please, if I say something and you're like, this does not apply to me, I get it. This is more of a cookie cutter overall approach that we would customize for each business and what you truly need during that onboarding. So when I look at all businesses, there's going to be a general 4 phases to your onboarding. And this is after you've already done your hiring, after you've done your recruiting. So I guess that's some of the pre-work, right? Getting your job postings up, doing your interviewing, all that kind of stuff, making sure that there's a systematic way that you're bringing them in, making sure that we're using a system to get them out their paperwork, and we're doing it in an organized and legal fashion. So that's kind of the pre-work to onboarding. That's more of the hiring part. But 4 stages when we actually get into onboarding that new person. The welcome and clarity, that's in the day one kind of environment. The actual training, which is maybe week 1, depending on the role, right? Then I call it ownership with guardrails. That is when they're starting to do the work, but they're maybe not quite, training wheels off yet. We're still really working with them. And then after that is performance improvement. And when we look at those 4 stages that I look at, the training one is obviously the one that's going to be most customizable. I've seen some companies be able to do training in 1 or 2 days, some in 2 to 3 weeks, right? So it really depends. But what I oftentimes see companies completely omit is that phase 3 and 4. They say, okay, I brought you in, we had fun, taught you everything you need to know. Bye, have a nice life. That's not the way it's going to work. Even when we look at goals, when we look at SMART goals, I like to look at smarter goals. Evaluate and reevaluate is to make sure that we're always looking at what we've done to make sure that they're doing the right thing, right? We can't just put them out into the wild, expect that they know everything without following back up. So when we talk about the welcome and clarity, we want to make sure, and I talk about this so often, make me understand what right looks like. How are we going to consider you successful at the end of your journey? Is it a KPI that we measure through our dashboards? Is it a certain amount of sales if it's on the sales department? Is it task-based? Whatever that looks like, we need to make sure during that onboarding, we are clearly defining what success looks like. We also need to make sure that they understand who does what in the organization. Picture this new person just plopped in the middle of this organization, in the middle of this company, and they don't know anybody. They're not going to know where to go if they have a question. And we always encourage an open work environment where people want to ask questions. They want to do better. If they don't know where to go, that's just going to slow things down for them and ultimately slow things down for the business. So an org chart's a great way to start. Give them an org chart of who they need to go to, whether it's the highest level of the business, their peers, their counterparts. Another big one is how people communicate. I've worked with companies who just do text, just do email, do Slack channels, do Teams, whatever it may be. Make sure they fully understand this is literally on day one, how the company chooses to communicate and where they choose to communicate. Because communication, as you guys all know, can make or break any company. And a big one for me is always going to be the culture of the company. What does it look and feel like? How are we as an organization? And that's going to show up the second they show up for training that day, the second they show up for their onboarding. How does that feel? Are they walking into kind of a ho-hum room where it's kind of a drag and they're put in the back room with a dirty folding table and a chair that's barely working and a computer that's not even ready to go? Or are we spending a couple of minutes? Notice I'm not saying a ton of money, right? A lot of the organizations that I'm working with, small, medium-sized businesses, we're not Fortune 500. We're not going to be able to spend $20,000 on a back room. But are we spending a few minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes, to just make sure it looks set up? Just make sure it looks welcoming, engaging, maybe a notebook and a branded pen for the person when they walk in. If we have company issued apparel, making sure they have at least one shirt sitting there ready for them. Because think of the tone. Think of what that starts the second they walk in. That feels welcoming. It feels inviting. They feel like everyone is happy for them to be there. And that's going to start off their journey culturally in this organization. And then it's throughout that. I always encourage, even again, depending on the size of the companies, if we don't have a true training manager in this location or wherever they're training, do we have somebody that can just check on them? Whether it is hopefully not the highest level of leadership, right? We talk about that a lot. We need somebody to delegate that too. But is it a store manager, a location manager, even a tenured employee who we trust that's just going to check in on them often? Now, the flip of that is if we are a little bit bigger of an organization, we might already have a training person in place, and that's fine. That's who we'll use. But if not, do we have that person who's just going to regularly check in on them to make sure they're okay? Phase 2, after we talk about the welcome, clarity, and culture, is the actual training. This is where we really get to dig in to what we're doing. And this is a big part of where we can make or break this person's future with the organization. So what we want to do is make sure we're showing them the processes that we go through, any expertise that we may have. If we have an SOP library, we're showing them that. If we don't, tune in next month where we're going to talk a little bit more about our SOP libraries and what they should look like. Making sure there's a continuous feedback loop for them and during their training time. So during this time, what I do see some folks do, especially in the small, medium-sized businesses that I'm working with, is they just partner them with somebody. Well, we're bringing them on board for this job. We're just going to partner them with Joe. Joe's been here for a while. I'm sure he'll be great. It'll work sometimes. I'm not going to lie. It's not the best, though. We have to have something a little more structured. And I know whenever I say structured, people think boring, time, money. Not the case. We can make something structured that still allows them to have this hands-on experience, but ensures that they hit every part of the process. One of the companies I was working with recently was a landscaping business. So what immediately pops to mind for me is, well, if we brought somebody on and had them, side by side with one of their coworkers, maybe we showed them how to use the lawnmower. Maybe we showed them how to use our point of sale. Maybe we showed them the different parts of the truck that we use, but we never showed them our other equipment. We never showed him our weed whacker or our chainsaw. Well, if we didn't show him those things, how is he going to know that they're there? How is he going to know how to use them? How does he know the expectations for them? If we just rely on that person who's already working their full day job to be the trainer, right? They're already doing something. They already have a full-time job with you. And now we're expecting them without a clear roadmap to bring on this new hire and make sure they're trained accordingly. That's not fair to the person that's doing the training. And it's also not going to be as efficient. So creating that roadmap where there's the training, going through the SOPs, absolutely some side-by-side training. I do believe in that, but it should be in a structured way to ensure that it's not a burden on the existing team as much as we can possibly prevent, but also making sure it's thorough. Then the next piece of that is ownership with guardrails. That is where they kind of start owning the work. They start doing it, but we're not exactly stepping away from them yet. So I think back into, you guys know I talk about express stores all the time, loved working there for 20 years, but we had retail stores. So when we would train those folks, I think of it as we had the training that we called kind of in the back room. And we actually had a very robust training. It was like 2 to 3 weeks, depending on where in the cycle it was and for what position. But we did have the training in the back that was hosted by a trainer virtually on the computer. But then throughout that training, they would actually come out towards the end, out onto the sales floor and engage with customers. But we didn't just let them go. We would actually partner with them. One of our more tenured sales reps would kind of sit side by side with them. That way, if there were questions or if something was being answered incorrectly, whatever it might be, we had somebody super quick to help walk through that process before they were actually kind of just let out on their own. And then the last piece to that, after the guardrails, is the performance and the improvement. This is a part that I'll tell you, I almost see nobody do. We should always be looking at our teams from a coaching perspective at this point. So we can kind of take away the training, as we called it before, and we can call this part the coaching. And it is after this person is out of our 2-3 weeks of training, however long, again, industries are going to vary. We don't just want to throw them to the wolves. We want to put them out. They know what right looks like. They know what success looks like. They know what KPIs are going to be measured on. Are we going back and visiting that with them? Not in a punitive way, not in a you're not doing what you're supposed to do kind of way. Do not think of it that way, which is so often what I hear people thinking, or I know people are thinking through my conversations of what they're thinking about when I talk about performance and improvement and accountability. It's not that. It's, hey, John, you've been out of training for a month now. I was looking through your numbers. You're doing absolutely fantastic at this, this, and this. Notice you're struggling a little bit here. Do you want to talk about it, or do you want to partner with Sally? She's actually amazing at this KPI. Maybe she can give you some tips and tricks. It's not being punitive. It's saying, I'm still here for you as a coach and as a guide, and I want to continue to get you to the next level. And it's that quick touch base, that quick check-in. And when I say me, I'm not saying, again, the founder or the CEO. I'm saying whoever's going to be responsible from a management level to have those coaching conversations with the people. But that should be documented. That should be a required component, because at this point, think about it. Let's say that's your 60-day mark that you're going to go in and do that review, or choose not to. You've already created what this job looks like, which means you've spent a lot of time thinking about what that job looks like. You've created your job posting. You put it on Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn. You looked through hundreds of resumes, found the right ones, did your phone calls, did your in-person interviews, hired somebody, got them through paperwork, got them all the way through onboarding, and now you're just going to drop them? You've already invested so much time, energy, and money into this individual. To just drop them is insane to me. So that original 30, 60, 90-day evaluation, again, is not punitive. It's just going back and saying, hey, I want to revisit what you've learned, want to revisit how you're doing. Let's keep it moving forward. So in my experience in the past, excuse me, I'm going to take a little sip of this tea because my throat is feeling a little funny with this cold. So I've seen great businesses that have hired people and lost them quickly within the first 30 days. And they were baffled as to why. And one of the reasons they were baffled as to why is they looked at their company and said, we're good people. We're a good company to work for. I don't understand why this would happen. Was their onboarding. When people came in, again, there was no clear training place. There was no clear training guidelines. They didn't feel welcome. And it wasn't because anyone was doing bad. They weren't doing anything bad. They just weren't being intentional about the training and the onboarding. So it became chaotic. It became inconsistent. The training became dependent on whoever was available. Now think about that for a second. Your best people are going to be busy. Your best people that know what they're doing are going to be the ones that are busy running your business with you. They might not be the person who's available to do that training if there's not a structured training that partners them with them, right? So you may have that newer hire or the person who's not assigned to the most jobs that's helping them because they're the ones that have a few minutes available. Not going to be a very reliable way to train or a very consistent way to train. So at that point, the new hire feels unsupported. They feel, I've gotten feedback, I feel stupid. I'm here for 2 days and I still don't know what I'm doing or what we're doing. The team feels annoyed because now they have this person saying, well, what, What am I supposed to be doing here? Can you guys help me? And then they feel an extra burden on them because they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing, but this person is asking for their help. And then you have an owner, CEO, manager going, they just didn't work out. They just didn't work out. Maybe they weren't right. No, you didn't work out. You didn't make sure you had a right system in place to make sure people were onboarded appropriately. Now, on the flip side of that, I've seen people do it absolutely right. I've seen even hires who we weren't positive were really going to do a fantastic job come out as rock stars because of the training program. I want to give a shout out again to Express Stores. I know we did it amazingly well. We had an amazing education and development team led by a bunch of people I still am in communication with today because they were such rock stars and so fantastic. But because of them, we were able to bring out these people who were just amazing, and out of the gate, we're performing as well as people who had been there before. And we had measurables and metrics to see how quickly we were ramping up our new hires. And we had people right out of training that were actually performing as well, in some cases better, some cases worse, but pretty on par with some of our people who have already been in the business for a little bit. So that just showed how great that onboarding and training was. But it's because we had checklists, we had touch points, we had a trainer that was amazing, an education and development manager who was actually engaged in the business and wanted to see people exceed any of the expectations they had. We had scorecards, we had curriculum that was actually carefully designed by our education and development team, and we had incredibly clear expectations of what we wanted from those teams. We didn't micromanage the processes. We made sure the processes worked. And when they didn't, we'd revamp. And I'll give one example of a time where we actually did revamp because we were hiring a ton of people. We had 3,000-4,000 employees over time. And in retail, turnover, unfortunately, even in the best of companies, is going to be a little higher in retail. And at one point, we had our training that was going on for 3 weeks. So if you were hired, let's say our training team was in the 3-week process and you were hired in week 2, we used to have another week and then a little more time before we were even able to get you to a class. So we were able to shrink that down to 2 weeks, but still made sure through all of our metrics that the quality of training was still amazing, even though we cut the time down to be more efficient, because I never want to waste time. I never want anybody to walk away from something and saying, I didn't really get value out of that. So we were really able to look at that 3-week period of time, not me, but the amazing team in place, shrink it down, and that we were able to actually do more trainings over time. So that just shows, even when we have an amazing thing in place, that idea that I talk about often of continuous improvement, apply that to everything. We applied it to training. We're able to shrink it down and still have amazing training coming out of that. But I have seen companies do training too far and too long. It gets boring. It gets dull. People only feel like of their 8-hour training day, maybe they're only getting 4 or 5 hours of actual content that they found meaningful. Not going to be the same. We want them at the end of those days to feel highly engaged, highly motivated, and excited about the training that they're going through, and then get out and make their money, right? So when we look through our onboarding scorecard or kind of our script, right? And again, every business is going to be a little bit different. We want to look at the 30-day mark after they're out of their training. Can they execute the basics? Do they culturally align? Do they have the values of our organization that we know we can expand upon the skills later? Are they showing up on time? Are they meshing with their coworkers to the best of their ability? Are they communicating issues early? Are they completing the core tasks? We don't expect them to be expert level, but can they complete the core tasks without supervision yet? That'll be your kind of 30-day mark. Your 60 days is going to be a little more pressure on, are they actually executing, right? Can they hit our quality standards? Are they able to manage a normal workload? Again, it could be retail, it could be field, home services, whatever it might be. Can they handle kind of a normal workload? Can they handle the very calm kind of tier 1 type problems that are coming in? Not the more complex ones. They're not around a while. Do they need less oversight to get their job done? That's right about where they should be in their 60-day mark. And again, once we create this based on your company, we will actually talk more about what the specific metrics are in there. And 90 days, that's kind of where we ask, can they run the role? And here's where people get a little stuck. Are they consistently performing? Are they making decisions independently? Are they contributing improvements? Are they really getting the job done? And here's where I know a lot of people get stuck with the good person versus the good for the business. And what I mean by that is we've had people at 90 days go, they're just not really getting it. They're really not be able to do this on their own yet, but they're a really nice person. I really like working with them. And that's fine. I'm not going to say every time we can't give them a little more time to catch on. But what I want to be very cautious of at that 90-day mark, or even if we want to stretch it a little bit further, I know some people are going to disagree with me, but we'll stretch it a little bit further and say, if they're a good person, but not good for our business, we want to make sure we're moving through that decision quickly. And that's, anybody who knows me knows it's really hard for me to say. I do not like letting people go. But at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to make sure the business is thriving. So at that 90-day mark is where you really should know if this person's going to kind of work out or not. And look, if you think they still have a chance at working out and they're not there yet, dive in, jump in, put some effort into it, and really make that decision quickly. But what you don't want to do is wind up at the 6-month part and go, they're still not performing, they're still not there, but they're a really nice person. We can't have that. We want everyone to get along. We love nice people, but we have a business to run at the end of the day. So that 90-day mark, you want to make sure you're looking at that. And if they don't define those milestones, make sure you're having those very clear and transparent conversations with them. And again, this isn't a personal thing against them. It just means they're probably not right for this business, or probably not right for this role, or even maybe this industry. But it doesn't have to be a mean thing. It could just, this isn't right for us. This isn't right for you, and this isn't right for our company. But make sure we're not sleeping on those decisions too long, because as we know, that costs a lot of money. So when we talk about an onboarding checklist or an onboarding script, however we want to look at it, every company, again, is going to be a little bit different, but we do want to make sure we have our scorecard, our SOPs, our tasks and checklists, any courses that we may have. We may have some courses that are available internally that maybe your company or we've created together, or even some subject matter expertise from some vendors that we use. I know I've had in the irrigation company, for example, Hunter had an amazing library of trainings that were free through their Hunter University program that we were able to enter into our curriculum. So making sure we have that, and making sure we have our check-in. Some of the other highlights that you can do during that onboarding is even people who don't necessarily do the training, have them pop in if you think there's going to be a value to that. For example, again, going back to Express Stores, our CEO used to quickly call into our Zoom rooms and just say hello, welcome everybody to the team. And that made them feel good. It made them feel important, that even though they were a brand new hire, the CEO still felt that they were important. Make sure we make those moments happen. And look, we're all busy, but if we take that 5 minutes, I promise you, it's going to mean the world to those folks. So if we have the opportunity to do that, let's do that. So I always like to leave everybody at the end of our call with some things to think about before we walk away. So here's a few. Be honest. What does your onboarding look like in your company? And does it depend on only one single person, or is it a collaborative team effort? What is the number one role that you think you're going to be hiring for this year? And do you have a written training plan? No, I'm not going to expect you guys to have it in some crazy, project management system. Is it even in a notebook? Is it written down somewhere? Is it in a Word doc, an Excel sheet, anything at all? Is it written down? Now, of course, if you say no, or you hesitate on any of those, that's where I put in my little plug. You give me a call. We work some things out together. I do have onboarding templates. I have 30, 60, 90-day scoreboards. I have what success looks like in 90 days, training checklists, role scorecards. We can even develop training together with some of the folks that I know in the training industries. But reach out to me. Hit me up on the website, my socials. Give us a call or text, 732-508-0580, LeMayFusionGroup.com, of course. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. And look, onboarding is one of the things I'm very passionate about, very excited about. So when you need my help, I'm here for that. Next month, this is the last week of March, which is our hiring and team structure series. Next month, we are going to go into process and operations series. I know that doesn't seem like fun, guys, but I promise you it will be. First one up is going to be, if it lives in your head, it's a risk. So we're going to talk a lot about processes, procedures. Second one is SOPs without the corporate BS. So really making sure that we're operationalizing and putting our processes into place for our small and medium-sized businesses that aren't going to drag you down, aren't going to drain you, but are actually going to help you get to what's most important to you. So for today, team, thank you all. Finish your drink, take a breath, and go lead with intention today. Thanks so much, everyone.